Canadians, Americans, members of the Commonwealth, and patriots the world over. Welcome to the show that tells you what they won't. Exposing the fake news, conspiracies, and corruption within institutions that govern our lives, and red-pilling the nations one fact at a time. It's Weathering the Storm with your host, Canada's Red Pill, Billy Joyce. Good day, folks, and welcome to another show. Today, I would like to go over a couple of Q posts that were posted in the last 3 or 4 days. And the reason I want to do that is because I was watching a television show last night with my wife. My wife watches a television show called Madam Secretary. And this TV show called Madam Secretary airs on CBS. And it follows the life of a female Secretary of State in the United States. Now, this show started 5 or 6 years ago, and when it started, I was convinced that it was a television show that was aimed at getting Hillary Clinton elected as the first female president of the United States, because the whole theme of the show is woman power, woman power, woman power as a female Secretary of State in the United States. A couple of days ago, on October 6th, Q posted a video featuring Nancy Pelosi. And Q wrote, "Wrap-up smear deployed versus Justice Kavanaugh. Wrap-up smear deployed versus POTUS, ? These people are sick. Walk away. Vote Republican. Q." What's interesting about this video and this wrap-up smear that Nancy Pelosi describes is that it can be applied as much on a macro level as it can be applied on a micro level. In other words, give the narrative, let the mainstream media run with that narrative, then use the mainstream media running with that narrative as justification for the narrative in the first place. It's kind of circular reasoning. So let's take a listen to how Nancy Pelosi admitted that wrap-up smear campaigns are used regularly. Take a listen.
You demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic. And it's self-evident.
It's self-evident. It's a tactic. You create falsehoods. You let the media run with it. And then you use those falsehoods to further smear. Yeah, everyone does it. Nancy Pelosi says it with a smile on her face. Democrats watch it. No, woohoo, look what we do. And of course, they'd project that onto the Republicans. They'd accuse the Republicans of doing that. I just spent Thanksgiving weekend, and by the way, happy Thanksgiving to all the Canadians out there watching this video. I am very thankful for all of you, and I'm very thankful that we still live in a country where we can somewhat express our thoughts and our ideas. And I say somewhat because we're on the verge of losing our fundamental freedoms if we don't wake up. And it's due to these types of wrap-up smear campaigns. So I'll go back to the Q post that indicates wrap-up smear deployed versus Justice K, wrap-up smear deployed versus POTUS. You heard everything she said there. You heard everything Pelosi said. It's pretty clear that that's exactly what they did against Kavanaugh. In other words, put out all kinds of allegations with absolutely no proof, with absolutely no evidence, with absolutely no corroboration. And then you get left-wing snowflakes like Chris Cuomo or Don Lemon or Anderson Cooper or Wolf Blitzer to rinse, repeat. Rinse, recycle, repeat, or rinse, repeat, recycle, rinse, repeat. You get what I'm saying. It's all you hear on the news day in and day out, the news. And then people believe it because they've heard it so much. It's been thrown into their heads so much and with so much fervor that people tend to believe it. When in reality, All it is a form of brainwashing, and Nancy Pelosi admits it, that it's a smear. It's a smear, a wrap-up smear campaign. When you go to the next post that Q posted, he puts up a picture of Hillary Clinton embracing Robert Byrd. Now, Robert Byrd is a former KKK leader. And that's something else the Democrats do, this wrap-up smear campaign. They tell people for long enough that the Republicans were the people behind the KKK, and people believe it, even though it's not true. And what Q posted here was the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery. 100% Republicans supported, 23% Democrats supported. The 14th Amendment, which gave citizenship to freed slaves, 94% Republicans supported it, 0% Democrats supported it. And the 15th Amendment, right to vote for all, 100% Republican support, 0% Democratic support. You don't hear that in the news very often, especially not in Canadian news, I can guarantee you that. Q then tells us, unplug from fake news, false reality, propaganda arm of Democratic Party. Think for yourself, research for yourself, trust yourself, find the truth, don't be a pawn in their sick game. Q. And then he posts something from Ronald Reagan. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. Now you could replace that with Canada or Australia or the United Kingdom. You and I have the courage to say our enemies, there is a price we will not pay. There is a point beyond which beyond which they must not advance. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. Ronald Reagan, Boom Week, Q. So last night I'm sitting down watching, not really watching television, I'm doing other things, and my wife is watching an episode of Madam Secretary. And this episode of Madam Secretary has to do with finalizing a deal with India and Pakistan on nuclear proliferation. In other words, they're signing a nuclear agreement with India and Pakistan. There's some issues running around this. Like I said, I don't watch the show faithfully. I didn't watch it in detail. I did know that there were problems going on. There was the Madam Secretary's husband that gave a speech that put the deal into question, and finally at the end of the show they strike a deal, but during the show there's attacks and everything else, and they're attributing the problems to nationalism. Now, just so we're all on the same page, nationalism, the word nationalism, you find within that word the word nation. So growing up, I was told that Canada was a nation. The United States of America was a nation. Mexico was a nation. France was a nation. Germany, Russia, the list goes on. Poland, Bulgaria, Chad, Sudan, Somalia, they're all nations. So when I hear the word nationalism, to me it tells me it's an ism related to a nation. And the last time I checked, we're supposed to be proud of our nations. We're supposed to be proud to be Canadian, proud to be American, proud to be Mexican. But it seems like nationalism has become this bad word for the left. It seems like the Democrats and liberals all around the world seem that nationalism is a bad thing. And when Q indicates that we have to unplug from the fake news, false reality, propaganda of the D Party, many would think he's only referring to the mainstream media news. I would suggest unplugging from the mainstream media. Either unplug from the mainstream media or learn their tactics and learn their methods. Because what they did on Madam Secretary last night was a psyop on the American people and whoever was watching Madam Secretary. So this Madam Secretary, the Secretary of State in this TV show, was having such huge problems trying to settle the conflicts with India and Pakistan that she brought in former secretaries of state. And who did she bring in to be her consultants in this dire situation. None other than Hillary Clinton, Colin Powell, and Madeleine Albright. Now, before we get into what they said in this episode of Madam Secretary, I'd like to remind you that Colin Powell, Hillary Clinton needs no introduction. Anyone following 8chan, 4chan, Twitter, any kind of alternative media over the last year, we know that Hillary Clinton has been up to no good for a very, very long time, and she's been accused of some horrific crimes against humanity, including against the people of Haiti, including against children. Again, I say she was accused. She's been accused by many who have followed many rabbit holes, and I think Haiti speaks for itself. We could also go into Benghazi. We could also go into the email scandal. We could go into all kinds of things demonstrating the monstrosity that is Hillary Clinton. Now, Colin Powell, most people don't realize that Colin Powell has been a Bilderberg attendee. People that have followed quote-unquote conspiracies for decades are very familiar with Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove is where they have the ceremony called Cremation of Care. And Bohemian Grove is a place where the world's elite gather every summer for this Cremation of Care. Some describe it as like drunken frat boys meeting together, but it's almost the meeting of who's who in the world. It's if you go to this article by Breitbart, it shows that hacked emails retrieved from Colin Powell indicate that he was at Bohemian Grove several times. He mentions being part of the Pelican Club. And in an email, he says, "In what star-studded cast we had in the show, His Majesty King Carlos, General Powell, and Dr. Kissinger. Ken Burns." This is an email from... I'm trying to find the name. It's one of the attendees. They got a hacked email. You have people like Jimmy Buffett at this at the Bohemian Grove. Former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper was at Bohemian Grove. There are emails detailing Colin Powell emailing Peter MacKay from Pictou, Nova Scotia, who was a defense minister at one time, who apparently hasn't attended Bohemian Grove yet, but Colin Powell has no problem at all detailing the meetings of Bohemian Grove with Peter MacKay. So Colin Powell, there are some question marks around that guy. Madeleine Albright, she's undergone a lot of scrutiny for having once said that the collateral damage of 500 million Iraqis was worth it in their battle to go get Saddam Hussein. In a nutshell, they're all warmongers. That's what I see. But Madam Secretary, the TV show that airs on CBS in the States and Global here in Canada, they figured it would be best to have Hillary Clinton, Colin Powell, and Madeleine Albright on this television show to tell the world just how diplomacy is and what the strengths are. And what I'd like to do is go through the segment of this Madam Secretary episode and dissect and critique everything that they say. So we'll start.
Won't take much of your time. I know that you all have other meetings, and
Elizabeth, there is no more important meeting for any of us than this one right now.
well, I do appreciate.
You hear, Clinton, there's no more meeting more important for any of us right now than this one. Well, remember Benghazi? When she slept through it? That wasn't very important. But this meeting's important on a television show. Very important.
Appreciate that. Come on, please sit.
The kind of time when people need to rally around.
Well,
It's so good of you to consult with your predecessors. We did it all the time, so thanks for asking us.
well,
It's so good of you to consult with your predecessors. We did it all the time, so it's so nice of you to do it. Is that a dig at President Trump that Mike Pompeo is not consulting them enough? I wonder if that's what that is. Is it a little dig? You see, you got 3 former secretaries of state. Well, we used to consult with each other all the time. Yeah, because you guys are all part of the same club. That's why. And now you got white hats in there instead of black hats that don't want anything to do with you. because they're coming after you. Powell, Albright, Clinton.
Again, the president has asked me to give a speech after the signing ceremony to address the attack on the White House.
You bear a heavy burden, Elizabeth. The whole world will be watching you.
You bear a heavy burden. The whole world will be watching you. And of course, she has to address the nation after an attack on the White House. I wonder what this will turn into.
No pressure.
Thanks for that reminder. Right, no pressure. Well, what do you say in the wake of a nightmare like this?
You need to
They're worse at acting than they are at politics. And they're bad at politics. But they're worse at acting than they are at politics. Let's see what Powell has to say here. Powell.
reassure the people that they are safe because we are resolute in our efforts to defeat this enemy.
Well, that's a start, but I think we also have to remember that those who attacked us are resolute too.
And you will have to reassure people about their safety. You can remind them that we do have the world's greatest military to protect and defend them.
But you know, as great as our military power is,
Oh, this should be getting good, because so far so good. Like, so far they were pretty bang on, but I'm feeling a bait and switch here into something else. And Colin Powell, as strong as the military is in the U.S., something else is coming. Something else.
that is not where our real strength lies.
Absolutely. Our strength lies in our core democratic values, in our Constitution.
Imagine Democrats talking about the Constitution.
Elizabeth, I was a little girl in London during World War II when the Germans were bombing. I learned later that 3 of my grandparents were murdered by the Nazis in concentration camps. And
Okay, so now we're talking about Nazis all of a sudden. So I'm not sure. Well, I know where they're going, but do you guys know where they're going with this? She's talking about Nazis. All of a sudden, Nazis.
so the threat of nationalism is not just a theory. I went through it once.
Nationalism. I knew it. It's coming. Here it is. Nationalism. They compare nationalism to Nazism automatically. Straight to Nazism. Again, I'll remind you, nationalism versus globalism. One has to do with nations. One has to do with a new world order. Which one are the former secretaries of state of the United States of America, one of the greatest nations on the planet? Which one are they going to push? They're going to push globalism, and they're going to smash nationalism. Just watch.
And I don't intend to go through it again.
The nationalistic threat is really expanding, and more countries are being caught in this trap. It's contagious.
More and more countries are getting caught in this trap. It's contagious. I assume by that he means countries like Great Britain that voted to exit the European Union. Or I assume by that he means the American population that voted Donald Trump into the presidency. Or I'm assuming by that he means countries like Italy, where people are hiring populists/nationalists over and over and over again. And what's Colin Powell saying in this Madam Secretary episode? He's demonizing all those countries. He's demonizing the choice of the people. He's demonizing nations. And he's propping up the New World Order. The same guy that was at the Bohemian Grove, where every year they burn the effigy of a baby in front of a giant owl statue with an altar in front of it. Wrap your heads around that. There are people, grown men, that go into the woods of California every summer and burn a doll on an altar to a giant owl they call Molech. The Bible speaks of Molech, and not to put your children through the fire to Molech, because it's a false god. And false gods all go back to Satan. Satanism. So Madam Secretary, the TV show, chooses to bring on a guy who is going to speak out against nationalism, and the guy just so happens to attend the Bohemian Grove seemingly on a regular basis, where they do things that most people would be ashamed of admitting to doing. But we'll continue.
It splits us apart. It makes us more difficult to deal with the issue, and it becomes even more contagious.
They attack what has made America great, and still does, and that is our
Really? It's the diversity that's made America great. I guess it depends what you call diversity. I get into this argument a lot with people. People that accuse me of being racist or xenophobe or sexist for that matter, or they think I judge people based on the color of their skin, which isn't true. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, red, brown, different shades of brown. I don't care what your skin color is. I care what your mentality is. I care what your worldview is. I care what your beliefs are. I care whether or not you're going to follow Canadian law when you come here. I don't care what color your skin is. If you're white and you decide to come to Canada and you want to practice female genital mutilation, for example, or if you're white and you want to come to Canada and you want to have special laws to protect you and yours, whereas all other Canadians are still subject to those laws, I don't agree with it. I don't care how white you are. Go back to where you came from. This is Canada. It's period. I don't care what skin color you have. If you can't come here and abide by our laws and by our traditions that fall within our laws, well, then you have no place here. So when I hear Hillary Clinton and Colin Powell speaking on TV with their mesmerizing tones and the background music of orchestras playing in the background music like it's some sort of epiphany, like it's some sort of moment of clarity on national television. When I see that, I see right through it. And you should see right through it. Why? Because it's a form of wrap-up smear campaign. You put out a bunch of stuff on nationalism that isn't true, but yet the people that are tuned in are like blind sheep being led to the slaughter. They believe everything. But it's a form of a wrap-up smear campaign where you tell lies about what nationalism really is. They equate nationalism with Nazism. And it's not so. Canadians should be allowed to be proud of their nation called Canada. The United States, Americans should be allowed to be proud of the nation they call the United States of America. Mexicans should be allowed to be proud of the nation that they call Mexico. There should be nothing wrong with nationalism. There is nothing wrong with nationalism. There's a problem with extreme nationalism. Like, for example, if Hitler just wanted to run Germany however he wanted to run it, that's one thing. But trying to invade every country in Europe and imposing German nationalism on every other nation, that's wrong too. That's no more right than Islam trying to impose Sharia law on every country around the world. That's not acceptable either. But what these people do is they'll demonize people that are proud of their country and proud of their heritage and proud of what I call old stock Canadians or old stock Americans. And let's stop with the bickering too about natives and the earliest white. If you don't know your damn history, go take a frickin' history lesson. Because some of us come from a long line of people that coexisted with the natives, that intermarried with the natives for over a century. So please stop comparing the earliest white settlers to North America with the British loyalists and the French loyalists who screwed it all up for everybody else. I don't care if you're from Ontario or Quebec, learn your history. I'm sick of being told that because I'm white that I played a part in the genocide of natives. My ancestry is Métis. And there are lots of us whose ancestry is Métis, who cohabitated these lands long before the British loyalists and the French loyalists came along trying to impose their system of monarchy. So get your facts straight before you start throwing comments at me, please. So yeah, nationalism. There's nothing wrong with being proud of being old stock Canadian or old stock American. And yes, there's such a thing. Prior to Confederation in Canada, prior to the Constitution in the US, the people that are descendants of those people, that's what I call old stock Canadian and old stock American. And we have a right to defend our views and our history and our heritage and our culture. But let's keep listening to what these bozos were saying on Madam Secretary last night.
Look at us.
And the attackers wanted.
Oh, look at us. She's saying, look at us, how diverse we are. Because she's an American from New York, I'm guessing, or Arkansas, or Bill's from Arkansas. Colin Powell's got darker skin. Madeleine Albright's a Jew. So look at us. Look at the diversity here. Yeah, there's diversity there. I don't see anyone wearing a hijab wanting to go get a gun without showing identification. I don't see anyone there wanting to impose Sharia law either. I don't see anyone there wanting to change our immigration laws in Canada or to allow for female genital mutilation. I don't see any of that. You're starting to see the difference between skin color and belief or worldview. There's a big difference.
To destroy that, to divide us.
So, Elizabeth, I think what we're all saying is talk about what unites us, even at this moment of peril. Remind Americans of our nation's original motto, something that I think about a lot and which seems more important today than ever. E pluribus unum.
E pluribus unum. E pluribus unum. I once had a boss. I once had a few bosses, but I once had a couple bosses. One in particular liked to use these Latin phrases. I guess it made them feel like they were superior because they knew Latin. E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. Out of many, one.
Out of many, one.
Hillary, you're so right, because we all unified depend on each other.
America, Americans.
All Americans.
All Americans.
Americans. All Americans. All Americans. Unless you're white. Unless you're a white Christian. Well, then you don't matter. All Americans. Do you see how they're using television for propaganda? I'm going to take a listen to her speech. She's going to deliver a speech then to the nation. And watch how they do it.
All of us.
All of us. Cue the dramatic music. Cue the emotional music. Cue the emotional scenes, because that's what we're going to see next. It's all meant to manipulate our minds, and it's all meant to manipulate our feelings, and it's all meant as a wrap-up smear campaign against nationalism by presenting us with false ideas of what nationalism is by comparing it to Nazism. And then if you're not for nationalism, you have to be for globalism. Globalism is where the New World Order fits in. It's where the Illuminati fits in. It's where the Bilderberg Group fits in. It's where Bohemian Grove fits in. It's where some of the Freemasons fit in. It's where the Jesuits fit in. This whole globalist movement that we're stuck within in 2018. Listen to the speech she gives here.
Thank you, Ms.
Please note the teleprompter front and center. And I'm sure that's how it happens in the real world too. They stand up there with their teleprompters. I mean, unless your name is Donald John Trump, that man uses a teleprompter, but then it goes off script, and usually his most impactful speeches are off script. Let's take a listen what Madam Secretary had to say to the people of the United States in the face of horrible nationalism on this television show that's being used by the Democrats.
Mr. President, and thank you, Prime Minister Khatri. Prime Minister Wadela, your courage and determination have made humankind safer from the second greatest threat it faces. What is an even greater threat than nuclear weapons? That which makes the use of them possible. Hate. Specifically, the blind hatred one group or nation can have for another. And that is why I am convinced that nationalism is the existential threat of our time.
See how they did that? I agree that hate is probably the biggest threat on the planet. But being a nationalist doesn't mean you hate everybody else. It just means you love your nation. So they switch it here and they equate nationalists with hatred. The sheeple that are asleep will not pick up on this. They'll regurgitate this. They'll talk about this over coffee at coffee shops. Did you see Madam Secretary? Oh my goodness. Did you see Colin Powell? Oh my goodness. Did you see Hillary Clinton? Oh my God. It was so powerful. It's so true. It's so powerful.
be clear, nationalism is not the same as patriotism.
No, you see, nationalism is not the same as patriotism. Really? Really? Says who? Madeleine Albright? Hillary Clinton? Colin Powell? Some actress on CBS? And we believe it?
It's a perversion of patriotism.
It's a perversion of patriotism.
Nationalism, the belief system held by those who attacked us, promotes the idea that inclusion and diversity represent weakness.
Now, inclusion and diversity doesn't represent weakness. Justin Trudeau admitted that multiculturalism is a form of entropy. It's a descent into chaos. So nationalism, you can embrace diversity and embrace nationalism. They're not exclusive. I loved Canada as a 10-year-old. And I would say that in Canada, we were much more patriotic, aka nationalistic, than we are today. And in 1980s Canada, there were Asian people, there were Middle Eastern people, there were Caucasian people, there were black people, there were people of every color. And no one had a problem with being proud of being nationalistic. There was no problem with that back then. But then came the age of globalism. Then came the age of, well, it's just one world. The one world order. We need a new international order. Our politicians are on the record saying it. So now they're just not using mainstream news outlets. They're using mainstream television shows to push the globalist agenda.
That the only way to succeed is to give blind allegiance to the supremacy of one race over all others. Nothing could be less American.
And it's never been about one race above all others. Has it not always been one nation under God? And that's what this is all about. That's what this is all about, is that they don't want it to be one nation under one God. They want it to be many nations under all gods, capital G, minuscule g. They want the fundamental beliefs that built America and Canada and other countries in the West to be eradicated and replaced with the beliefs and the worldviews that cause a lot of these people to move here in the first place. There's no logic to it. Why would you want to move to a country because your country is so horrible, and then when you get there want to impose on the country you're moving to the ideology and the beliefs that created the conditions that were so horrible that you had to move in the first place? Where is the logic there? There's none. But yet I got to turn on the television and listen to this kind of drivel coming from the lips of some fake Madam Secretary on television, while they employ actual politicians to come push the narrative of the left, of the Democrats.
Patriotism, on the other hand, is about building each other up and embracing our diversity as the source of our nation's strength.
Oh, you mean like President Trump is doing right now? Lowest black unemployment in history, lowest Latino unemployment in history, lowest female unemployment in 65 years, more jobs available than there are people to take them. The stock market is on the rise, the GDP is on the rise. Is that what they mean here by making sure that everyone is propped up? Because that's what Trump is doing. And Trump does very much push a nationalist, populist perspective. So when I look at nationalism applied in the real world and I observe what I can see with my own eyes, what I'm seeing is this nationalist approach that President Trump is taking is working. In spite of what the mainstream media TV shows are telling us.
We the people means all the people.
We the people means all the people. I agree. Not 200,000 refugees from Somalia. They're not part of we the people yet, in my opinion. We the people. When I hear we the people, I think we, the old stock Canadians, or old stock Americans. We the people. Not someone who got here last week. Someone who got here last week, you sit on the sidelines, you let us decide the direction of the country that you decided to move to because you think it's so great compared to yours. So you sit there because obviously you couldn't do anything in your own country to improve matters. So you're going to sit on the sidelines while we decide what's best for our country. And then if you want to adapt to our country, you're welcome to stay. And if you don't want to adapt to our country, you're welcome to leave the same way you got here.
America's heroes didn't die for race or region. They died for the ideals enshrined in our Constitution. Above all, freedom from tyranny, which requires our unwavering support of a free press, freedom of religion, all religions, the right to vote, and
freedom of religions, all religions. Well, what happens when those religions go against your laws? Should they be allowed? If something is taught inside of a religion that by carrying it out you're breaking the laws of that country, should that religion be really should that religion really be free to express itself however it wants? Should it? And should we as Canadians and Americans, or maybe you're from Great Britain or maybe you're from Australia, should we just sit by and say nothing as we bring in people from all over the globe that have no interest whatsoever in assimilating to our culture and our beliefs and our traditions and, most importantly, our laws? Should we just turn a blind eye to that? Are you going to tell people about Madam Secretary? Are you going to tell people to turn off their television sets and stop listening to the drivel coming from the left? Because that's all the media is. The media, and now I'm discovering it's not just the mainstream media news, it's mainstream media television shows as well, where they're bringing in former politicians to literally fill roles on these TV shows. And they're using the media and everything it does as a means to brainwash the people, as a means to get us thinking that being proud of who we are and proud of our ancestors and proud of what our ancestors built is somehow a bad thing. And I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let that happen. I am not going to let my children grow up in an environment where everything that is traditional Canadiana is ridiculed in favor of customs and traditions that are foreign to the majority of people I know. Now, what you do is completely up to you, but I encourage you, please get the word out. Please get people talking. Please get people paying attention to what it is they're doing and how they're using every aspect of the media to fill our brains and fill our hearts with half-truths and lies. That's all they do. I mean, this Thanksgiving weekend, I got into argument over argument with close family members who are just shut off. They're oblivious to what's going on. They're oblivious to the tactics of the mainstream media. And this is just another example of their tactics. It's another example of weaponizing media. It's another example of the Democrats using the media and the people that they're in bed with in the media to push their agenda and to push their ideology onto us. Nationalism isn't a bad thing. Patriotism is not a bad thing. What's bad and what's dangerous is globalism. And if we don't wake up, it's coming very soon to a theater near you. I'm done now. If you enjoyed this video, you may want to take a look at other videos you find on this page. Don't forget, if you like it, push the subscribe button under this video, and feel free to like and share with all your friends. Follow me on Twitter by following the link on this page. If you want to interact, feel free to post a comment, but please, no obscenities. Thanks for watching. Billy Joyce signing off and reminding you that I'm here to help you weather the storm.